Jason Moorhouse, Arbory, Castletown and Malew, is with us, looking back, first of all, over the last year, the first year of the Cannan regime. I mean, I'd say you're still up there with the most asked questions, I think, when it comes to house keys or Tynwald. You are leading by a mile, would you say?
It's an interesting time. It's not what I chose to do, but it's kind of what needs to be done. It seems to be a very strange 12 months. There seems to be a lot of issues that are being brought in. There's a lot of inconsistency. There's a lot of things that are making you ask what is actually happening here, who's driving the car and where are we going.
I mean, you're not on any departments, are you, these days?
I'm on nothing at all. I'm on the
Is that your
Economic Policy Review
choice,
Committee.
or not been asked?
It was, in a way, because I wanted to be on the Economic Policy Review Committee, so that ruled out Treasury and a couple of other departments, and because of that I ended up kind of between.
So you're a scrutineer?
Yeah.
That must be interesting.
It's very interesting, and I do miss Julie and Laurie, because when you're asking questions, it's good to have that added support. I would have been the first year, people getting up to speed, so next year should be more fun.
Well, you're an old hand now, aren't you? So you know how it all works. But I mean, these questions, I know it costs X amount just to even ask them. Do you ever think that's a thing to worry about or not?
It worries me when they say that.
Oh, right.
Because having been a teacher, my thought always was towards the final exams. And I'd start every lesson with exam groups saying, well, I sort out the board, etc. Here's a question I want you to answer, or part of a question. And if the students could answer the question, I was happy. If they couldn't, it needs to be looked at again. And I feel the issue is if they're saying this is down to cost, officers' time, there's an issue here, I'm thinking, whoa, aren't you in charge of the brief, doing what's happening? Any minister, any senior civil servant at any moment should have the capacity to answer any of my questions.
Well, they can answer the first one, albeit maybe an officer's written it. It's then they have to have about 10 other versions because they don't know what your supplementary is going to be almost.
But in most cases, there's been communication with the minister, and there's been a discussion, there's been emails about moving things forward and moving them in a certain direction. So I would say it's rare to actually ask a question without supporting information. And when I do that, it's frustrating because I don't get anything out of it. And the minister often looks less good than they would normally. So I think there's got to be a balance between the minister and the backbench in terms of trying to get good answers to good questions.
It's about balance there. So, sometimes even I've kind of gone, whoa, the question seems almost like, what is this doing in the House? Is it something that could just be sorted out even at a lower level, in commissioners' levels?
It's actually frustrating that a lot of the time we've got issues that should be dealt with in moments, and after a dozen emails to officers, after emails to the minister, you're still not making progress. I was at Castletown Commissioners yesterday evening, and they were utterly frustrated, having contacted 3 senior ministers via letter. They got one response that was indicating that there'd be discussions next year. There was another response that said it was from a political member within the department, and there was another response that hadn't arrived yet. And you're thinking, this is a key area of local government, and if a letter from the clerk isn't getting even a holding
You're the
response,
last resort, are you?
I feel to be a lot of the time, yeah.
Okay.
And I think I've also got that issue that being quite well known for asking questions, having that backdrop of being at Castletown for so many years, so many people know me, the one that think, who should I ask? Oh, these are my 2 MHKs, but I don't know either of them.
You either get to, I think, on certain things, there's no question
Definitely,
about that. What's been the highlights of this last 12 months in Parliament?
I think actually getting back and just being able to actually ask these questions to move things forward. I was talking to Mr. President this morning about how next Tuesday is going to work out in terms of the questions.
It's special one they're having.
Yeah, and it's kind of, as you said before, being back again, I'm in a privileged position because everyone else who's back again is caught up in the system.
What have you achieved this year then, in the last 12 months?
I think I've actually achieved a lot. I've achieved things such as with the housing, where the rents went from being payable in cash to being paid through electric transfers, and a lot of people don't have bank accounts, a lot of people struggled, and the minister placed a date on that. It was extended. It then was paid through the commissions in Castletown and Ramsey, and there was a hold. There was, it had to be looked at again. If you're in the Council of Ministers, you make a decision, you have an input, and you move on. As a backbencher, you can bring something to the table and say, this isn't quite right. And you can do something on social media, you can get that additional input from the people, you can ask the questions, you can bring emotion.
Do you feel quite lonely sometimes, though, that it seems to be you against
and
them?
I think that's back to being year one of the Parliament, because there are some really good new political members, but they aren't used to the system yet. So I asked a question on housing in October time, and most of us had housing as one of our key areas in the debate, in the manifestos and things, and there was no supplementary questions. It's like, this is really, really important. And when it came through, it was one of the first things that Chris Thomas said was, this is thanks to the MHK for Arbory, Castletown and Malew, who brought the motion asking us to look at first-time buyer housing and look at how we could improve it. And I thought, you've actually got them to actually go away, think about a situation and come back with something better.
You quite often bring up questions that you obviously have to keep asking. I mean, I'm thinking about the school situation, Castle Rushen, and what was going to happen in the old police station in Castletown for a long time, that sort of thing. You're frustrated that you have to keep going back.
I think it's a privilege when you can keep coming back, because I think if you are in the Council of Ministers, you've got to make a decision, stick with it. As a backbencher, you can say, OK, that's the decision, but can we review it? So the schools, at the moment, it's back to communication with the minister. And I've got this crazy situation now. How many students will the new school be for? And it's 950. And I'm saying to the minister, but that doesn't make sense. In January 2019, 755 students Castle Rushen. Tomorrow, there'll be over 900. But you're talking about an extra 45, 50 places when we've got 2 large new housing estates coming through. We've got a new school that's going to actually drag in students from the south of Douglas, right from there across to Foxdale and beyond, because they want to go to a new school. So to actually go for anything less than 1,100.
Where are we now, though, with it? Because I must admit, it seems off the boil again. Is it actually going to be started at any particular point? Where they're still
we're pushing it,
but no start date as such.
No, but it's actually positive that as a group of Southern Tynwald members, we've actually said that going forward, we must see more in the budget. We must see real staging posts being put forward. Are also going to start voting against things like the budget.
You brought out a letter, didn't you? MLC's on board. Is that really a good idea? I mean, they don't have constituents.
It's quite an interesting one, just in terms of...
Was that your idea?
A Southern Bloc. It was one of those things that kind of evolved at the meetings that, we've all been kind of quite proactive, and we're quite lucky that we've got a number of backbenchers, a number of members of the MLC, who remember MLCs, and
they don't have constituents, do they? They're not meant to be working for a particular part of the island, surely.
That is true, but in terms of their role, they're there to be raising issues, they're there to be challenging the executive.
But would they be so interested if it's about Ramsey? That's what my point is, and probably not, because they're Southern MHK.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but in a way, when it comes down to the need for something, it's got to be done. So, people in Ramsey phone me up and say, can you raise this? And I'm quite happy to do it. In terms of being a national politician, Castletown, Arbory and Malew are close to my heart. But, I've asked a lot of questions about Douglas Promenade and things. It's a national game. It's moving things forward in a national way. So
how do you think that this year's been? Has it got the right balance? Enough people challenging, besides yourself, obviously? Or do you think everyone's pretty well happy, or at least on departments, keeps them quiet?
Yeah, and that is the problem. Once you're in a department, you're kind of part of the system. And
part of the problem?
I don't know if you are a problem, because you're trying to work things forward, and there's so much bureaucracy, there's so much reading material, there's so much, how do we deal with this now, that in terms of planning for the future and moving things forward, you're not getting there. And having been into the biggest departments, is kind of, I've got a real relief that I've got this freedom.
Okay, well, we're talking part 2 about next year, but you've got lots more questions, no doubt. Ready to rumble.
I've got 5 questions down for next week, and I'm seriously hoping that those questions will be asked before we have the debate.
Oh, okay.
If we have it after the debate, it's pointless, because I'm asking the questions that give the information that other backbenchers can use in the debate.